Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recognize myself for 2 minutes. I have an amendment in an order that would prohibit the EPA from using the social cost of carbon estimates for an energy-related rule that costs more than $1 billion unless and until a federal law is enacting authorizing such use. Now, the administration slipped into a rule about microwave ovens, a new prediction for the cost of carbon dioxide emissions between now and the year 2300. Despite the profound implications to economy and families who make a living from coal, there was no public debate, no stakeholder comment, no vote in Congress on this new estimate. In southwestern Pennsylvania, coal is our heritage. It fires the steel mills that build the Empire State Building, the St. Louis Arch, the Golden Gate Bridge, but that heritage and prosperity is threatened by this new regulation. We've already seen what the social cost of the war on coal is today. The cost is jobs. 3 weeks ago, more than 380 workers at the Hatfields Ferry and Mitchell power plants in Pennsylvania were told they were losing their jobs. The plants had to shut down under EPA regulations after they spent hundreds of millions of dollars in new environmental modernizations. More than 15 organizations representing workers and stakeholders endorsed my amendment because these groups share my concern that this regulation that bypassed congressional oversight will put hundreds of thousands of miners, boilermakers, factory workers, laborers, railroaders, electricians, operating engineers, steam fitters, and machinists out of work. My amendment says Congress, not the EPA, decides regulations by considering what this means to the families and workers. The EPA's policies have real-world consequences. Annual coal production in Central Appalachia is dropping sharply by more than half in just 5 years' time. There are towns where mines are shutting down where a staggering 41% of the residents fall below the poverty line. The social cost of carbon and the wider war on coal is a war on the American worker and their family. Let me show you the real cost of the EPA's rules. Those who oppose this amendment ignore the health effects of those living in poverty who are twice likely to have a risk of depression, asthma, obesity, diabetes, heart attacks, and other health effects. Poverty leads to devastated communities, early death, the lost dreams of a generation of Americans and their children. And many of us can remember Bobby Kennedy's walk through the broken Appalachian coal towns back in the 1960s to illustrate the abject poverty where families and children were living. I worked and volunteered in those towns, trying to help families hang on to some sort of semblance of hope in a hard-scrabble life. I yield myself additional time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Too often their hope failed, and now history is about to repeat itself. First, jobs are lost for the tens of thousands, and after that, the hundreds of thousands. And when people lose their jobs, we give them unemployment compensation. They go hungry, we give them food stamps. They lose unemployment, we give them welfare. They lose their homes, we give them public housing. They lose their dignity and pride, and the government has nothing left to give. Nothing. When all these folks ever wanted was a job and a chance for the American dream, not shattered by the EPA. I reserve my time.